Did you know that Dan Aykroyd originally wanted John Belushi to star in Ghostbusters and was writing a line of dialogue for him when he got the call that his friend had died? Ghostbusters turns 40 years old today, so here are some things I bet you never knew about it. Ghostbusters came from an original idea by Dan Aykroyd, inspired by his fascination with the paranormal. His entire family loved ghosts. His great-grandfather was a renowned spiritualist, his grandfather experimented with using radios to contact the dead, his dad wrote a book called The History of Ghosts, and his mother claims to have seen ghosts. Aykroyd was also inspired by the ghost comedy films of the 1940s and 1950s, like Abbott and Costello's Hold That Ghost, Bob Hope's The Ghost Breakers, and the Bowery Boys' Ghost Chasers. So he started writing the script in the early 1980s, with himself, John Belushi, and Eddie Murphy in mind. At one point, the movie was going to take place in the future, with groups of intergalactic Ghostbusters, and it would have cost $200 million to make. After Belushi's death, Aykroyd pivoted from Belushi, obviously, to Bill Murray, and Ivan Reitman was Aykroyd's first choice to direct the film, because of his work on Animal House and Stripes. It was Reitman who convinced Aykroyd to change the movie's setting to a modern, grounded, Earth-based setting with a lot more realism, because that way the supernatural elements would be funnier and in more contrast to everything around it. Reitman then brought in Harold Ramis to work on the script and maybe star, and though the script wasn't finished yet, Reitman was able to sell the movie to Columbia Pictures in the spring of 1983 and got a $30 million budget, but was given a June 1984 deadline, meaning they had 13 months to finish the script, shoot the movie, and execute its special effects and post-production. Oh, and also they didn't have the rights to the Ghostbusters name yet, because the Ghostbusters was the name of an unrelated 1970s sitcom for children that was owned by Universal. Because of this, the movie was almost called Ghost Stoppers, Ghost Breakers, or Ghost Smashers, which are all much worse titles. So in the summer of 1983, Aykroyd, Ramis, and Reitman sequestered themselves at Aykroyd's home in Martha's Vineyard, with the goal of finishing the screenplay. They wrote a ton of material, and a number of scenes got cut, including a scene about an asylum that was haunted by dead celebrities, and an illegal ghost storage facility at a New Jersey gas station. They ended up writing 3 drafts of the script that summer, finishing the 3rd one by early August. Bill Murray is notoriously non-committal when it comes to his projects, and so Michael Keaton, Chevy Chase, Tom Hanks, Robin Williams, Steve Guttenberg, and Richard Pryor were all considered for the role of Peter Venkman at one point or another. Christopher Walken, John Lithgow, Christopher Lloyd, and Jeff Goldblum were also batted around for Egon, but Reitman was of course loyal to Harold Ramis. Ernie Hudson had to go through 5 different auditions for the role of Winston, beating out people like Gregory Hines and Reginald Val Johnson. Hudson said that he took half of his usual salary to do the movie, and when he showed up on day 1, his part was greatly reduced. He's talked at length about how disappointed he was in how the film came out. Daryl Hannah, Denise Crosby, Julia Roberts, and Kelly LeBrock all auditioned for the part of Dana, and Reitman was hesitant to cast Sigourney Weaver because she was mostly known for dramatic acting. But she proved her comedy chops in her audition when she got down on all fours and barked like a dog. It was Weaver herself who suggested that Dana be possessed by Zool in the film's climax. John Candy was offered the role of Louis Tully first, but he didn't understand the character and turned it down. Reitman then went out to Rick Moranis, who accepted it an hour after getting the script. Sandra Bernhardt turned down the role of Secretary Janine Melnitz, which ended up going to Annie Potts. Gozer the Gozerian was originally intended for Paul Rubens, but he passed on the role. All of the Ghostbusters on-screen equipment was designed by Stephen Dane in just 6 weeks leading up to production. The proton packs weighed 30 pounds each, and the psychokinetic energy meter was made from a handheld shoe polisher. The Ectomobile was a converted 1959 Cadillac Miller Meteor ambulance. Filming finally began in New York City on October 28, 1983, about 8 months out from the deadline. They shot for 6 weeks on location in New York, finishing just before Christmas. Reitman did allow some improv from the cast, which included Rick Moranis' lengthy speech at the party. That was all improvised. But due to the tight timeline, Reitman only allowed for a few takes. When they filmed on the street outside 55 Central Park West, the city allowed the production to close several blocks during rush hour, which led to mass traffic problems across the city. Then, after Christmas until the end of January, the movie shot on location and in sound stages in Los Angeles. While New York's Hook and Ladder Company 8 served as the exterior of the Ghostbusters headquarters, because it was an active firehouse, interiors were shot at a decommissioned firehouse in Los Angeles. The rooftop of 55 Central Park West was recreated on a soundstage in Burbank and was one of the largest constructed sets in film history. It was built 3 stories off the ground to allow for low-angle shots and had a 360-degree cyclorama painting backdrop around it. The lights used throughout this painted backdrop needed so much power that the rest of the studio had to be shut down and an additional 4 generators had to be brought in. To get ahead of the workload, Ivan Reitman was editing the movie during production. Ray's sexual encounter with a female ghost was actually supposed to be a whole subplot, but it was just cut down for time. So how did they do the movie's 630 special effects shot under the tight deadline? Every VFX house in town was booked, but specialist Richard Edlin was planning to leave ILM at the time and start his own business. So Reitman convinced Columbia and MGM to float him $5 million to start this company. Edlin then founded Boss Film Studios, which did the special effects for Ghostbusters within 10 months, and most of them were filmed in one take. Steve Johnson was tapped to create the onion head ghost, and he allegedly took 3 grams of an illicit white substance and finished the creature's design in one evening. Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis wanted the creature to be an homage to John Belushi. Overall, Onion Head took 6 months to produce and cost $300,000. He later got the name Slimer in the 1986 animated series The Real Ghostbusters. The Marshmallow Man was a performer in a styrofoam and fiberglass suit a la Godzilla, and its facial expressions were controlled by cable mechanisms. The water in that miniature set was actually sand, and the marshmallow topping that rained down on the cast was shaving cream, which gave some of them rashes hours after filming. The zombie cab driver and the library ghost were done with puppets, the terror dogs were stop-motion animation, and then all the other non-puppet ghosts were animated, which took up to 3 weeks for just 1 second of footage. The ectomobile siren is a recording of a leopard snarl, cut and played backwards. Because all of this work was going on while the film was under production, editor Sheldon Kahn was able to complete the first full cut of the movie 3 weeks after the film had wrapped shooting. A 1984 test audience made of people just taken off the street loved the movie, meaning no reshoots would be needed, but an early screening for industry insiders didn't go as well. Ray Parker Jr.'s theme song has a whole history unto itself, but basically the production was using Huey Lewis's song, I Want a New Drug, as a temporary placeholder track for a montage in the middle of the movie, and Ray Parker Jr. basically ripped off that song to match. Go listen to the 2 songs, they're strikingly similar. And Lewis later sued Parker Jr. for stealing his song, and the 2 of them settled out of court. The very first teaser trailer for this film was just 15 seconds long and only included the movie's logo plus the words "Coming to Save the World this summer." In total, Columbia ended up spending $10 million on marketing, and the movie needed $80 million to break even. Ghostbusters opened on June 7th, 1984, up against Gremlins, to generally positive reviews, beating that other horror comedy classic $13.6 million to $12.5 million. It stayed at number 1 for 7 weeks, making $229 million worldwide in 1984, becoming the second highest grossing movie of that year, only behind Eddie Murphy's Beverly Hills Cop, which made $234.8 million. It was nominated for 2 Oscars, Best Song and Best Visual Effects. Its theme song won the BAFTA for Best Song, and it also spent 3 weeks at number 1 on the charts. It's believed that the Ghostbusters theme song added $20 million to the movie's box office. And of course, Ghostbusters went on to spur a massive franchise, leading to a ton of merchandise sales, video games, sequels, TV shows, the whole thing. But in 2008, Ghostbusters became the first feature film to ever be released on a USB thumb drive.